God's honest truth. He would not be with us were it not for you, and not by our own choosing.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jesse with Canine Perspective, and I have a longtime client with me. This is Angela. Her dog is Doug, who you brought back in...
This was just after the pandemic, so I think we started in late 2019, I would have been after that, 2021.
Yeah. Okay, yep. So it's been a couple of years now.
Yeah, it has.
Okay, so what brought you to us initially?
So initially, we give you a little backstory. So we adopted Doug from a shelter on the south suburbs just before the pandemic. And when we brought him in, they had told us initially they felt as though he had some behavioral issues, and he did not exhibit anything. So we originally took him as a foster. We have 2 other dogs. He was totally fine, no issues. And then once he got acclimated to us, we started to see things coming out. Once he got to home, he was very super protective, especially of me. To this day, he still is. And he also is hyper, as you know, reactive to energy. So anytime the energy in the room changes, the dogs change energy, he freaks out. Super high anxiety. We had him boarding at the same facility that we take our other dogs to, and daycare and boarding. We, at the time, actually were going through a renovation of the house, so they were going to daycare every single day. And that facility, you walk in and it's chaos. There's no structure. And he initially was okay, and they were taking him. And as time went on, you could just see when we would walk up, he would start to tense. And the behaviors and the anxieties would start to come out to the point where he couldn't handle himself there. Sure. He would react, he would snap. So we got expelled. Doug got expelled. And then him being home, again, these behaviors and anxieties started to build and build. And that's when we just could not live our lives anymore and not board him or not take him to daycare.
Yeah, I remember. Yep.
So that's how we found you. So ironically, that boarding in that daycare facility is at our vet. Yes. And they could offer us and would offer us no support for him behaviorally or anything. They basically said, sorry, he's a pit mix. We don't do that.
That's interesting.
Which was disappointing to us because that was them kind of buying into the hype. Because you know him, he's anything but. He is just the most lovable, tender dog. But he has all of these complexities and challenges, and we weren't going to give up on him. So I, did some search and found, came across you, and we started doing the training, and here we are, a couple years later.
I remember, I think during the consult, you had mentioned it was like 3 medications.
Yes, so before we found you, we had found this animal behavioralist who, just crazy like woo-woo thing. She would tell us, I'm not even kidding when I tell you this, she would tell us that we had to reduce his cortisol by closing all of our blinds, had to stay closed. He couldn't basically experience the outside.
Wow.
They wanted us to, keep windows closed so he couldn't hear garbage trucks, basically isolate him from everything. And he was on, Prozac and 2 other kind of tranquilizer type medications. So, and I'll never forget, in our first training session, we were like, dogs don't give each other Prozac in the wild. He has been off the medication since, but I think that experience for those couple of months that we were going through that, this woman has a PhD, and you're kind of like, maybe I should do this. But at the time, both Kevin and I were like, this is insane. We're treating this dog like he's an invalid. It was wild. So we said, we've got to do something else. So
sure.
Yeah.
Let me double check that, put this to record so we're not, because I thought I heard it click. No, it's recording. Okay. I get paranoid sometimes.
I don't blame you.
So I think I remember, one of them was Prozac. I think it was fluoxetine and gabapentin.
Gabapentin, yep.
Okay. And then I thought it was, it's just crazy because, you're doing all this stuff and then they're prescribing all this medication and then they're like, but then we also can't help you.
Yes, correct. They gave us nothing in terms of behavioral or training. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
It was really, and again, at the time, it made us feel, we're educated people, we're smart, we have common sense. It just made us feel really skeptical, helpless, and then kind of, ashamed that we had this, dog who we loved and we wanted to have a good life, that we felt as though we were failing.
Sure.
So again, out of desperation, doing all these searches, and I know at the time, and I'm sure you still do, you had such a long wait to get in, but yeah, we waited it out, and here we are.
Yeah, two years later. So Julie, who did our first daycare testimonial that we were talking about briefly earlier, her dog also, when she had started, was on 3 different types of medications.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't realize that.
So now he's just on the one, and I think she was talking about, like, she was considering taking him off the one. But I was like, yeah, I'm like, well, it's crazy with the medicine stuff, because I've had lots of clients who bring their dogs already pre-medicated. And then, they ask me my opinion on taking the dogs off of it. And I'll tell them, I'm like, well, your dog's on a medication now, and the dog's still acting just as crazy.
Yep.
So I'm like, but clearly it's not doing anything, right? But then the human component of, like, well, I don't want to take my dog off of it and then make my dog worse. But I'm like, but there really hasn't been a change. But the person gets so used to, this is what I do, and it's so easy, right? You just put the pill in the food, and you can just give it to them. But in my opinion, it's like everything now is just, here's a pill for it.
Well, that, and I think too, and you said something that made so much common sense early on to me, is that, and I think it's actually on your website, we as humans try to treat animals like they're humans.
Yep.
And it's the worst thing for them, because what we've come to realize, particularly with Doug, is he needs that. And at home too, we have a very stringent structure, and he needs that. He needs to know what to expect. He needs to be treated and trained and adhere to the training, so that he can go out into society, come to boarding, come to daycare, and know how to act, rather than just be medicated and kind of be left to his own devices.
I went with the client once. They were out in Indiana, and they had a German Shepherd, same thing, was on drugs. And then they needed to get him neutered. And they asked me if I would go, and I said, sure. And they gave them like this bottle of some kind of tranquilizer pill, okay? I show up, and the dog comes out the car, and he's just like this, and then he's drooling, and it was just, looking at it, I was like, wow, this is not good. So then, we go into the vet office, and they come out, and he flips off anyways.
Yep.
So they're like, okay, they gave him a shot of tranquilizer, so they put more tranquilizer in him. They came back a second time, he flipped out again.
Oh, that poor baby.
And we had to put a blanket on him, another tranquilizer, and then on the third one, they go to pick him up, and he growled. But he didn't, like, he was at that point, he was just limp. And I was just like, it's crazy. Like, the animal instinct, or the adrenaline and all that stuff, like, it'll override a lot of stuff.
And that's definitely the case with Doug, because he's high anxiety to begin with, and it has to do with, like you explained, like with his upbringing, or his in utero, whatever that situation was. And that's, to this day, I mean, he still struggles with, like, he does, we call him nervous nibbler, he nibbles on things. But I do think, though, that it's still better for him to have the physical outlet than to be on the medication.
Sure.
I think there are things that we all have our quirks, right? All human beings do, or all animals do. And so long as it's not harming him or himself or others, I'd rather have him do his little nibbling than have him on the medication constantly, and then have that interfering perhaps with, the natural training or the behavioral.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny, because I was like, oh, this is the daycare one, and I'm like, but we're talking more about training. But while we're on the subject, so I looked into gabapentin, because I think, so he was on the three drugs, and I think you took him off of 2?
We took him off everything now.
Okay.
He's off everything, yeah.
But I think the last one was gabapentin.
Yes, it
right?
was, yeah.
So do you know what gabapentin is for?
No.
It's a painkiller.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I literally just looked it up right now. So I looked this up, because I kept thinking, I was like, so remember we did the training?
Yeah.
And then Doug was just overriding everything?
Oh, well, get out. Are you serious?
Yes.
That makes sense.
Because I remember, I was like, man, I'm like, this is crazy. I'm like, sure. I'm like, from my experience, pitties they're bred to take pain.
Yep.
They're meant for fighting, right?
So then we're fortifying him.
Exactly. So then I remember probably one of the last times that I saw you when we did the home visit, and I was like, this is ridiculous,
oh, that
right?
one was bad, yeah.
And then I was like, well, I know he's still on that drug. So then I looked it up, and then I was like, gabapentin is a painkiller. It's meant for like, I guess people with like nerve issues, if they experience like pain or whatever, that's what it's used to treat it.
Crazy.
So then I'm like, I wonder if it was the gabapentin that was neutralizing everything.
Yes.
Because that's why, because the other day I corrected him for something, and it wasn't anything major. I just corrected him for something here, and he gave me this big old, what? And I was like, what? And I looked at the collar, and it was like at like 60. I'm like, I know you're capable of taking a lot more.
Because he's not on it anymore.
But I think I had also remembered you saying we took him off everything entirely.
Yep.
So then everything started to click again. I was like, oh, so then when we were talking about doing the testimonial stuff, I was like, I got to double check this because I think she's going to find this very interesting.
Crazy, yeah. Well, and how scary is that I trusted, again, this doctor?
Yeah, because then it's like, well, you know, you got reactivity and all this stuff. So it's like, well, how does a painkiller relate to everything else?
Well, and that makes me really sad too, because he's been so good, and I love when you guys post the videos of of them, like him with other dogs and with on the treadmill and things like that, because that makes me, it makes me feel good that he is seeing benefit of all the work that we put in through, and being able to come in and do the things that the other dogs are doing, because he did not have that opportunity, was not afforded that opportunity. Again,
Correct.
The drugs weren't doing that for him.
Well, the drugs and closing the curtains.
Jesse, I'm a 40-something-year-old woman, and I was closing the curtains for a dog.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've heard crazier stuff. I mean, the stuff that our clients come in saying, you know, and it's unfortunate because you come to this professional and you trust them. Like, you already give them trust to begin with, right? Because you're like, well, if you're here and you're charging this much money per hour or whatever, like you got to be worth your weight in gold or whatever. And then you walk out being skeptical, you know?
Well, you have somebody with a PhD, you just automatically think, oh, this person knows what they're talking about. Yeah.
No, unfortunately, in the animal industry with training and stuff, in my opinion, when they have PhDs and stuff, I just roll my eyes. I'm like, I don't even listen to them.
Yeah, no, same.
You know? And that's why so I have a client right now. I'm sure he paid into the tens of thousands for these two dogs. 725 hours of training, okay? And guess who's training them now?
You are?
Yes. So,
they'll
you know,
see results then.
so it's crazy, but same thing, he came in and he's like, wow, you're charging this much money. You have this really nice website, a really nice facility, like all this other stuff, right? And then certifications, you know, not PhDs, but dog training certifications. Right. So he paid into it. So then we were talking about it, and then I'm like, I'm not certified. And he looked at me, he's like, you're not certified? I said, no, I'm intentionally not certified because it means nothing. My certification is the work that I do.
Yep.
That's all you need.
Results, yeah.
That's all you need,
results.
you know? And then, but yeah, it's crazy.
But yeah, I think switching back to the daycare and the boarding, what has been huge for Doug in contrast to the prior experiences, and you know how reactive he is, hyper reactive to energy. And the first time we walked in and there was no sound whatsoever, there were maybe 30 dogs in that area that we were in.
Way back, yep.
Right, and silence. And to walk, it was just surreal. We were like, what is going on here? Because you're used to, you know, walking in and everything is chaos and crazy. And from the moment that we walked in, I mean, he was skeptical, but you could just see him physically relax, realizing that, wow, you know, I don't have to be on edge, not knowing who's going to come at me or who's going to be barking or how I'm going to get corrected or disciplined. I think that has been a huge success, you know, part of the success that we've had with you is just the energy is so calm, and so you have it under such good control, and the dogs know what to expect and how they should behave. Correct.
So I think it's funny, like when we get clients that train with us and they're like, is my dog able to come here? I'm like, yes, that's why we're here. We're here for dogs like Doug and, you know, Belvedere and the ones that were kind of like the only option or like the best option for them, because otherwise, you know, like you bring him to the old place, he was already starting to tense up, it was already starting to become a problem in the space itself. But then once the dogs get acclimated to us, because the other thing is we have, for the most part, constant employees, like they're consistent. You know, whereas most places are a revolving door. And that also helps because not only do the dogs see like pretty much the same people every time they show up, which creates that comfort. The people that we have here have the skill set to continue to carry on everything that I've taught since way back when I opened up, which then allows the dog, as you said, to relax and then begin to think like, oh, I guess I can trust.
Well, and your team members are familiar with him, so they don't have the nervous energy, not knowing what to expect with him too. And that was what we kept running into at the other facility, was the turnover. They were apprehensive because they'd heard about, oh, Doug is crazy, or Doug, Doug, Doug can't handle himself. So they come out like, oh, already upset.
And now we got
then
this feedback loop.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So it's huge.
I think we may have had like a couple of like little reactive moments from him, in the time that recently I don't think we've seen anything.
He hasn't even been reacting when we drop him off. Like before, he would come back on us. I forget what that's called.
Redirect?
Yeah, he would be redirecting on Kevin or I when he realized we were walking up. But I would say the last 3 or 4 times we've brought him, he's just come right in.
Yep.
Yeah, we have not had to correct him at all.
Yeah, and then so like going to that, because having the like, let's say my staff, right, who are like trained on, okay, if this happens on the drop off, this is how you're going to handle it. So like, despite the fact that there can be a moment of tension or reactivity, the fact that everything just again continues to move forward, as opposed to like, you know what, plan B, take your dog somewhere else.
Right. Exactly.
So yeah, but I'm thinking in my head, I know I corrected him here once, like when I mentioned earlier, but it was like the tiniest thing, and whereas before, I remember him, like when he would get into that state, like it was.
Yeah, there was no bringing him down. I mean, the first couple times it was, we did have some challenges there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I remember there was one time Kevin dropped him off, and one of my employees went to go get him, and he knew about Doug. And now he was more like, his personality type was more like anxious around dogs, but we hadn't had any issues with Doug. And he was bringing him in, and I guess Doug pulled back, and the muzzle popped off.
Flipped.
But the door closed.
Oh.
So Doug was outside, leash was caught in the door, and I hear my employee screaming. So I'm like running, because I'm like, oh, I knew he was getting Doug, so I thought it was something.
Yeah.
And he's just like, help, and I go in the foyer, and I'm like, I see Doug outside, and I see my employee, I'm like, why are you screaming? And he's like, and I'm like, I'll take it from here. He went inside, and I saw that Doug didn't have the muzzle, so I was like, okay. So I shortened the leash, I opened the door, and then he just waddles in. Like there was no, but it was just that that particular employee's personality type was like, like he was one to like really exacerbate things. And then when I took him, I was like, it was completely
It was fine. Yeah.
There was no issue.
I mean, but Doug, he does. I mean, and that's unfortunate too about the stereotype about the pit breeds, because I think, everybody, because it's sensationalized that they are aggressive, or that they, they have that negative energy, that I think part of that, plays into it. So don't necessarily, Doug, if you looking at him, he doesn't look like a cuddly dog. He's not a little Shih Tzu or something.
So, I mean, it's kind of like you've already said this indirectly, but like, how has it been ever since like transitioning from your old place to
It
here?
is. I can't tell you the quality of life improvement that we all have had. Just our relationship with you and with Elizabeth and with the staff, not having to worry about, I travel quite a lot for work. We go on vacation and whatnot, and so we do. I mean, he's here for daycare and boarding a lot, and not to have to worry, to have a peace of mind knowing that we know what to expect, that we're not going to get everybody up in a frenzy, trying to figure out, who's going to take him, who's going to drop him off, what kind of situation we're going to run into when we do drop him off. It has just been such a peace of mind knowing that he can come here. He knows what to expect, to be himself. It's the way that he, with the training that we've gone through as well. The at-home situation continues here, and we can go about our lives, not constantly worrying that we're going to get a phone call, or that he's unhappy, or that he's miserable when we're on vacation, or taking care of our daily lives.
Yeah. And part of that is also when you give us the okay of like, do what you need to do to have my dog here. That's like,
unequivocally,
because we get people that that push back on things. Like the muzzle is always the biggest one. I don't get it because that's just a safety thing.
Well, I think for Doug, that is it's a security thing for him, because he doesn't wear it at home, and we don't even put it on him when we're in the neighborhood anymore. But it's like a switch flips when he knows when it's coming on, when it goes on, he's going in the car. And the car used to be a huge thing too, because he had never, I don't think until we adopted him, had been in a car. So we actually did that training with Enrique, and now he used to be awful in the car, barking or whining the entire time, and now he lays down and he's quiet, but he knows when that muzzle goes on, it's definitely, again, and like you said, some people see it as a negative. For Doug, it's like a security blanket.
Yep. So when we hear that from our clients, like, do what you need to do to have my dog here, it makes it a lot easier for us because we just do what we need to do.
Yeah.
You're
the experts.
It's funny because I was looking over someone's profile, and then same thing, they said, do what you need to do. I said, great.
But he is now who he is because of you. I'm not going to restrict that.
Yeah, and now we don't really need to do a lot of stuff that we did before.
Yeah.
Because in the beginning, like, he was transitioning and he needed to learn his place here and everything like that. And now that we've established that, he's opening up even more.
Yeah.
But that's also a great help to us, because it's like now you have the you're worry-free to a degree, right?
Absolutely.
But the same thing for us, we're worry-free in the sense of like, all right, well, we can do what we need to do, and then so we can have this dog be here. But even like if something were to happen, we address it, we tell you, we just continue bringing them in. Like this is why we're here, is so that how do you say, you have an option, and it's not like, okay, well, if they kick my dog out, what am I going to do?
Well, not only that, but it's an option that, like I said, it's just such peace of mind that I know he's just not being locked in a kennel for 3 days or 4 days, and just being let out to go to the bathroom. I mean, he is, going on walks, or he's on the treadmill, and he's, living a good quality of life while he's here, thanks to, the confidence and the expertise of your staff.
Thank you, yes. And that's another important thing, is I want the dog to still experience things, because it's the withdrawal, it's the closing the curtains, it's the going out at weird times in the day so you don't see anybody, that make the dog more antisocial.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear it. So Elizabeth noted here, so like the way we run things here is we have different tiers of handlers. So we have novice, intermediate, and then experienced, okay? So certain dogs are experienced handler only. Doug is one of those dogs. But you can see how he's starting to open up. So I think she mentioned to you, like with Brenda, so she was telling me that they were trying to get footage of him. And that Enrique was trying to like get him to like get excited, and then he was just like, I'm not having it. And then
I know you, Enrique.
And then Brenda walked in, and he just like right away flipped the switch and was just like happy to see her, and then like starting to do a little bit of zoomies and stuff,
Oh, that's heartwarming to me, because he is a big, again, just energy, but he can tell people, even in our family, but even like in our extended family, there are people, of course, that don't like dogs, and they tense up, and he can tell that. But when they do, he's a huge lover. So clearly, there's a bond there with him and Brenda, or Brenda's.
Brenda, and then I think we also have Fabian. He's also opened up too.
Yeah.
So he's got his couple of people here. I had to move him for Elizabeth earlier, and I walked up to his kennel, and he just saw me, and he just like went like this. And then I go and grab the leash, and he like kind of sullenly go into the leash, and then he's like, okay, am I gonna get in trouble? I'm like, nope, just taking you to go potty, buddy. Like, it's fine. But that's also why we have that progress with them here.
Yeah.
It's because he knows, like, all right, if I get out of line here, there will be consequence, right? So there's obviously, like, Enrique and I do a lot of that stuff, so it's tied to us, but that's what keeps the dog in harmony with everything else.
He knows what to expect, and it's the same thing at home. We have like I said, we have a very disciplined schedule, so that's another huge benefit to bringing him here, is I know that he's going to be treated very similarly. He knows what to expect here, the same way that he does at home, so then there's no question in his mind what's going to happen, and he doesn't have to be on edge, wondering how he has to act or what he's going to need to react to.
Yeah. Anything that we can improve upon?
Oh, gosh. Off the top of my head, no. You guys are, no. You need to teach other people how to do this.
Yeah, it's actually something I've thought about, but the problem would be, I'm going into a setting where now they have 80 dogs out of control.
Right, yeah.
And I started this with one dog.
Yeah.
You know, one dog was taught the rules, then we got another dog, and now we're here at like 50 to 60 dogs.
Yeah, your model is, no, I love the website, the reservation system is so easy, the payment, I mean, everything is just seamless.
Excellent, glad to hear it. I actually did the website.
Yeah, it's everything is incredible.
I'm actually updating
You're a man
it now.
of many talents.
You have to be. You know, if I outsource everything, I would be broke.
Yeah.
You know, or more broke than I already am. Anything would improve upon? Anything that you think is worth sharing?
Oh, just, I mean, I can't, and I tell everybody about you, Jesse. I mean, I can't thank you enough again for, you know, it was a little bit disheartening. We had never rescued a dog before. We'd always gone with breeders and had, you know, gone that route. And it was, like I said, we almost felt ashamed that we were in this situation where we were trying to do a good thing and we end up with, you know, a dog with so many challenges. And we were not going to give up on him. I mean, you know, Kevin, you know me, we're not the kind of people that are like, oh, you know, take him back to the shelter. This isn't going to work for us. But I cannot thank you enough because he is such a, you know, he is our family, my boy. I have 2 sons. We have, you know, 2 other dogs. You know, he's our family, and we were all really, you know, for a time very stressed about whether or not we were going to be able to, you know, to hang on to him because we were just at a loss with how much we've tried. And I mean, the gift that you've given us with, you know, the training and the boarding and the daycare, your willingness, even at times when it was really difficult to hang in with us, and he's a completely different dog. I mean, I look back all the time on that video from our first from our first consultation where he was just the entire time losing his mind, and to now, I mean, can you even imagine? Can you even believe that he's the same dog?
It's crazy because when other employees see him, they're like, that guy? You know, like new employees are like, that guy? I'm like, yeah, that guy. Like, you know, so we have to remind them because, you know, when you come in, it's first impressions.
Yes.
You know, now the first impression is good, which is great. We love that. But now it's like if we get someone who's more naive or uneducated on dog stuff, and that's why we have the experienced intermediate novice handler thing and everything like that. It's like, yeah, that guy used to be a loose cannon. Yeah. And he's here now, you know, he's doing so much better now because of everything that we've done. And then in time, you can then handle him when we get you there. But I'm very happy to have Doug here. My staff, they see him, you know, they love him. He's a part of our pack now, you know. It's
super heartwarming to us that, like I said, he in the beginning, like he was a lone wolf. I mean, you know, picked up on the streets of Chicago Heights and, you know, destined for whatever. And here, I mean, it makes me tear up to hear you say that he's a part of the pack because it's been a challenge. Yeah.
You know, I tell, you know, my trainers, because when people hear like, oh, you're a dog trainer, like it's the first, you know, the sit, the puppy training, the simple stuff.
I wish.
and I've always told my trainers, I'm like, that's what people think. Yeah. But I was like, but our job is to keep dogs in their homes.
Yes.
You know, because they're not going to find another home most likely, unfortunately. It's just the reality of it. And if this person gives up on them, there may not be a second chance. So when you have a family who is willing to invest time, money, effort, emotion, because it's obviously, it said there was some emotional times there, right? But do the work. You know, there is some stuff, you know, especially in the gabapentin phase, because even for me, I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Yeah. Where it was like, it was very tough. Even for me, like I walk away, I'm like, man, I was like, this doesn't make sense. But then, you know, when I looked into it and then now, and then his sensitivity, I'm like, wow, like, well, actually, I think there was a variable there that we didn't consider. And that's partially part of that difficulty.
Yeah, you learn as you go. I mean, and I guess that's...
But at the end of the day, he's still here. Yeah. You know, he's with us. You're still able to enjoy him as a family member, and you know, so that's why we do what we do. So we have a family that's willing to put in the work, but then you know, you have us as well that are willing to ride it out with you, and it's really like a team effort.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And and God's honest truth, he would not be with us were it not for you. And not by our own choosing, but because we were failed by so many that just were not willing to, you know, to do and to put in the work with us. Mm-hmm. We can't thank you enough. Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you and your family, and we appreciate Doug. If you ever need anything, you know where to reach us.
Absolutely.
And then thank you for your continued support, okay?
Always.